What started as a missing persons report over a decade ago has since grown into one of the most closely followed serial killer investigations. The case centers around the Gilgo Four, four women whose bodies were found brutally murdered along a remote stretch of beach in Long Island, New York. The case went cold until 2023, when new evidence finally brought Rex Heuermann, an architect and father, into the spotlight as the prime suspect. With the trial awaiting, new details continue coming into light, including how strands of hair and DNA methods never used before in a criminal trial could be the key to linking him to the crimes, as well as a disturbing document believed to be used to plan the murders, containing detailed instructions on how to commit the perfect crime and get away with it. There's a lot to go through, so let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. Today, we're going to be going over a lot of important updates regarding Rex Heuermann and the Gilgo Beach murders. This technically is part 3 of my video series on this case, and in it, we are just going to dive deeper into the victims, break down the new evidence to how Rex was tied to the victims, and just cover some of the latest developments, including the big DNA topic that's been a major focus in the courtroom. There is a lot of debate on whether DNA methods never used before in a New York courtroom could be used to link Rex to the murders via hair found on the victims. If this is the first time that you guys are hearing about this case, I highly recommend that you guys go watch my part 1 and part 2 video on this. I go into a lot more details about just everything from the beginning, how police even discovered there was a Long Island serial killer, and there's just so much more information in those 2 videos, so I will have those linked down below and just floating up here. Now, I want to reiterate, as I did in my last videos, that while these young women's lines of work is relevant to the case against Rex, it is just far from who they should be defined as. They were sisters, some mothers, they were daughters, friends, and they were loved by so many, and their lives were only just beginning. They did not deserve what happened to them, and they deserve to be addressed as other than just like sex workers or hookers, which is how they are often referred to in the media. I just wanted to reiterate that, but I know I have the best familia ever, so I know you guys are always so respectful, and you guys just always show so much empathy to the victims. I also want to make a note that today's video is for educational and awareness purposes only. Some of the details in this case, they're just horrible to listen to and just extremely heartbreaking. These stories are just never easy to tell, but these victims matter. Yeah, there is just a lot of information to go over. This is definitely going to be a long video. It's very scientific. There's going to be a lot of DNA words thrown out there, so just follow along with me. I know it might sound a little bit like we're in school or something, but this is all very important information. So I have my iced tea with me. This is going to keep me going through the video. I have a huge water bottle. Before we get into the video, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, MeUndies, for supporting this channel. You guys, summer is finally here, which means lots of sunshine, fun road trips, and of course, lots of beach and pool days. But can we be honest for a second? This also means one thing, one terrible thing: sweat. Not cute, right? Especially if you're not wearing the right underwear. That can get uncomfortable real fast. This is why I swear by MeUndies. Their micromodal fabric is truly magic. It's super soft, breathable, which is so important to me, and somehow even stays cool when it's 90 degrees and your AC is letting you down. If you're looking for something even more breathable and summer-proof, check out the Move Me line with Breathe fabric, which has moisture wicking and anti-odor technology, which is just great for working out and just keeping extra cool. MeUndies has everything you need. They have briefs, they have boxers, they have cheeky cuts, bralettes, which I'm actually wearing one right now. I'm specifically wearing the Woman Dream Seam plunge bralette in the color Latte, and I love the color because it just blends in so nice. Like, look, you can barely tell that the bra's even there. For me, I personally like the Dream Seam collection. I like when things are seamless, they're not tight, they don't give you that like muffin top, and you just feel more comfortable and you just feel like it's breathable. I just went to Europe and I had that 10-hour flight, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna wear for like underwear, and like what am I gonna wear for my bra? I ended up just using MeUndies, and I used again the Dream Seam collection, and it was perfect. I felt so comfortable on the flight. I mean, you name it, they got it. They have over 20 different styles and 100 different colors and prints. Their summer prints are so cute, perfect for that tropical summer vibe. Think like popsicles, pool floaties. I mean, your underwear drawer deserves a little vacation too. I love that they use sustainably sourced materials and work with partners that actually care for their workers. If you're not happy with your first pair of undies, no worries, it's on MeUndies. With more than 30 million million pairs sold and 90,000 five-star reviews, MeUndies are an essential summer must-have for every drawer. Right now, you can score sizzling summer deals like up to 50% off at MeUndies.com/Jackie and enter promo code Jackie. That's MeUndies.com/Jackie, promo code Jackie for up to 50% off. MeUndies, comfort that's made for summer. Thank you again so much for supporting this channel, and with that, let's jump right into today's video. Okay, so let's start off by quickly summarizing where we left off in part 2 of my last video. Rex Heuermann was officially arrested on July 13th, 2023, as he was leaving his Manhattan office, and he was charged with the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He was then placed on suicide watch and denied bail due to the extreme depravity of the crimes that he was accused of committing. Then in January of 2024, Rex was charged with a fourth murder, the killing of Maureen Brainard Barnes. Melissa, Megan, Amber, and Maureen then became known as the Gilgo Four. We also discussed how Rex's house was being searched and just how his family was doing in the aftermath of all of this. As of July 2024, Asa, Rex's ex-wife, is still moving forward with the Peacock documentary about the case to talk more about how she's handling everything from her perspective, and unfortunately is actually still battling cancer, and she has shared that she is not yet in remission.
I'm not in remission yet. I have up to 3 years. Then the doctors will see if I'm in remission.
Again, there is more information about Rex's wife and his family in my last 2 videos, but that is essentially where we left off. Hey everyone, it's Editing Jackie here. Since the video was filmed before the Peacock documentary came out, I wanted to quickly jump in and just share some very important information and just some interesting things that I learned while watching the documentary. Just in case you guys don't end up watching it, I will kind of give you guys a summary. Like I said at the beginning of the video, anytime you feel like you're done doing research for this case and you finally caught up, something new happened. So it's just like impossible to upload the video without leaving certain information out. So yeah, I wanted to quickly hop in here and just let you guys know what happened in the Peacock documentary. It was very interesting to hear from Rex's family. I feel like at this point we've only really heard a little bit from Asa, but the documentary was just a whole, completely new perspective on the family, and they basically go through what happened after Rex was arrested, how they feel about Rex, do they believe he is a Long Island serial killer, and basically how all of this has affected their lives. We hear from Victoria, Rex's daughter. We hear a lot more from his ex-wife, Asa, and we also hear a little bit from his stepson, Christopher. We even get to meet Rex's best friend, David. So let's go back to the night that Rex was arrested on July 13th, 2023. Rex's daughter, Victoria, was actually working with him in his office in Manhattan, but she left earlier than him, telling him that she'd see him at home later. But he never made it home because, as we know, he was arrested on his way there. Later that night at around 11 p.m., Asa was waiting for her husband to come home when the FBI suddenly banged on the front door. They pushed their way inside and asked if she knew why they were there. Confused and anxious, Asa guessed, are you here because of Rex's guns? I mean, I don't know. Meanwhile, Victoria was at home and she sees the FBI coming in here and she's thinking like, oh, I wonder if they're here because of something related to the IRS or something about money, because she knew that her dad did have issues with taxes and with the IRS, but after thinking about it for a minute, she was like, wait, would the FBI really be here if this was just about taxes? She was very confused, but then came a huge shock. The FBI told Asa that her husband was suspected of being the Gilgo Beach serial killer, and that by the next morning, he'd be officially charged with murdering 3 women. Asa thought that they were completely out of their minds, just insane. She couldn't understand or believe what the FBI was saying, and she just couldn't believe that they were talking about her husband, the man that she lives with, the man that she loves, the father of her children. As they started questioning the family, agents even asked Victoria if her dad had ever touched her inappropriately. Victoria was still in shock, but she responded immediately saying, no, never. That same night, the FBI relocated Asa and the family to a hotel where they were being monitored by a cop outside their door. That must have been such an incredibly difficult night. Imagine just thinking your life is completely normal, and then all of a sudden the FBI shows up to your house telling you that your dad, that your husband is accused of being a serial killer. They tell you to quickly pack your things and then they move you out of your house. It's definitely something very, traumatizing to go through. Asa later remembers watching the news from their hotel room, seeing their home being torn apart by investigators, their entire lives lives dissected. She says that she really just couldn't process it. None of it made sense. Later, after 13 days of the FBI combing through the house, she and the kids were allowed back inside, but moving back in felt like they were stepping into this like big fishbowl. Reporters, neighbors, strangers, everyone was outside just watching, trying to get a statement from them. Asa says there was like an army of media just lined up waiting for someone to step outside so they could quickly snap a picture or quickly get an interview. In the documentary, we also see how Asa and Rex have remained in contact since his arrest. She actually calls Rex, while he's in jail, and it's just so eerie to hear his voice. He asks how she and the children are doing. He tells her that he had a burger and mashed potatoes for dinner. He says that he's going to try to go for a walk the next day, and he also asks if he's going to be seeing her soon. Again, it's very eerie how calm he sounds in this clip. Like he's describing his day as if he's like on a retreat or something. It doesn't sound like someone who's frightened or worried or concerned that they're literally behind bars accused of being a serial killer. Asa tells him that yes, she will be seeing him tomorrow, and then Asa tells the documentary that she and Rex talk all the time, but that she does hold back from him. She says that even saying I love you to him feels like it would hurt him too much because they're not together. She still just doesn't believe the allegations. She also goes into detail about how they met and says that they met when they were both 18 years old, so super young. Asa was working at a 7-Eleven and Rex was in college. While we don't know much about Asa's early life, we do know that her first marriage had ended badly. Her ex-husband had become emotionally abusive and manipulative after their son Christopher was born. He told her that he'd never let her be happy with anyone else and he was just being very toxic. Rex, being her good friend, she says, stepped in not just emotionally but legally. He actually took her ex to court, managing to free Asa from any obligation to him. Eventually, she and Rex moved in together, she got pregnant with his daughter Victoria, and they got married, spending the next 27 years together. Asa says she always just loved him so much and thought that he was just the most handsome man ever, that she pretty much viewed Rex as her savior. After his arrest, Asa attended court for the first time. She said that she was overwhelmed and everyone was staring at her, but again, she still says she doesn't believe Rex was seeing sex workers or living a double life. To her, he was and still is a family man. She says that the only way that she'll believe it is if she hears it directly from him. She needs to hear those words come out of his own mouth. She needs to hear him say, yes, I am the Long Island serial killer, and yes, I did this. In court, people say that she was even smiling at him, and she said that she was so happy seeing him in court because it just brought her comfort. She just doesn't see the monster that everyone else sees. Now, she does admit that the only times Rex wasn't around is when she and the kids were on vacation. He would stay home alone to work or just make changes to the house, and now she does kind of question whether he may have used that alone time for something darker, but again, only questions it, doesn't believe it. She still insists that whoever did this couldn't be a family man and Rex is one. She says that the real killer has no kids, no attachment, no love for a family, and as far as she knows, that man isn't Rex. And to reporters in the documentary giving their perspective, this brings up the question, did Rex manipulate Asa? At the time that she was dealing with her ex-husband, she needed help. She was emotionally vulnerable and maybe she wasn't emotionally equipped to see who he really was. Maybe that's what's allowed him to keep up this double life all this time. Rex's daughter Victoria, on the other hand, reflects a little bit more critically. She remembers how while she was in college, her dad's architecture firm just started to really take off. He was busy all the time working, pulling all of these big gigs, and she just remembers thinking to herself like, wow, I've got some big shoes to fill. He sometimes would come home a little stressed from work and frustrated, but she says that he never got violent. The worst thing that he ever did was just break a plate in the sink. She says that her dad was like an open book. He hunted, he had guns, and everyone knew that he had basically been collecting guns since he was 18. Rex was also super into woodworking, and she still has a wooden dollhouse that he built just for her. Victoria says that the vault room in the basement was always locked and she only ever entered when she was with him. It did have a combination lock, but Asa insists that it did have an easy way out, like no one could get trapped in the vault like investigators claim Rex trapped his victims there. Asa was even shown the information in the bail documents which discuss how Rex used used that vault room as a kill room, but Asa says that she doesn't buy it. She believes investigators are just twisting things to fit their narrative. She says nothing in their home life was ever off limits. She had access to his laptop, she knew his passwords, and could basically use anything of his, so in her mind, there were just no secrets between them. Now, going back to Victoria, she adds that she was barely a teenager when the murders happened. She was only around, 12 to 13 years old. She remembers him being very much present in her life, but she admits that there were times, maybe 10% of the time, when he wasn't home. And she was just too young to really know what was going on during those moments. She also says she can only speak about the version of her dad that she knew. She admits that there still might be some loyalty there, which makes her say that, but admits if all of this turns out to be true, she would have a very complicated love-hate relationship with her dad. It would just break something in her to know that her dad turned out to be a monster. In the documentary, the BTK killer Dennis Rader is also mentioned as writing a letter to the press saying that Rex is basically his clone. BTK's daughter, Carrie Rawson, recalls initially seeing the news of Rex's arrest and just immediately thinking of his family. She said that the similarities between the two were chilling. Both fathers were 59 years old and both daughters were 26 at the time of the arrest. Both men hid in plain sight, and Carrie said that when her father was caught, there was zero trauma support for the family. There was nothing. Now she sees the same thing happening to Rex's family and she feels sorry for that. Their home was destroyed, their lives have been shattered, and society instantly turned against them. She says that she herself was just 12 years old when her dad committed his final murders, yet people blamed her, even though she was literally 12. And now she feels that people are doing the same thing to Asa and Victoria. She says that to this day, people still ask her, how didn't you know? How didn't you know that your dad was a BTK killer? And that's what Asa is getting asked now. Carrie says that the public needs to stop asking if Asa's lying, if she's in denial, or just disassociated. She says that when someone you know, someone you love, someone you've lived with for so long is accused of horrific things, your brain just simply can't process it. It doesn't make sense, even when it's true. She says society needs to recognize that Rex's family are victims as well. Victoria told Carrie that she swings between depression and anger. She's had people, online wish that she were dead, but she keeps asking, how is this my fault? I was only 12 or 13 years old when this was happening. Carrie just says that at the end of the day, the blame, the shame, and the accountability falls on one person, Rex. Now, Victoria has only visited her dad once in jail. What really scared her when she went to go see him was just how normal he seemed. She said it was hard to believe that the same person sitting there calmly was being called a serial killer. But then again, she was so young back then when the murders happened, so she couldn't be sure he wasn't that evil man either and just doesn't remember. The documentary also talks about some of Rex's visitors in jail. He is now in a 10x6 cell under 24/7 surveillance, and one of his early visitors was his best friend, David Jimenez. David described it as just surreal, walking in and just seeing Rex casually greet him like nothing was wrong. Rex told him, "Hi David, thanks for coming to see me." And David just told him straight up, "This is really bad. If you did this, that's another part of you that I've never seen. The Rex that I know couldn't do this. Convince me you didn't do this." David even brought up the rumors of unsolved murders in Vegas that authorities are reporting could be linked to Rex, and he says that Rex just chuckled, saying that all he ever did there was gamble and drink. He even claimed that they would never find any evidence in his house and was almost cocky about it. David begged him to confess if it was true to at least spare Asa more pain. He says that when he mentioned Asa, that's when Rex went pale and actually teared up a little bit. He didn't tell David like, okay, fine, I'm innocent or anything like that. Instead, he kind of just lowered his head, and in that moment, David says that he knew Rex was guilty. Asa says that she doesn't ask herself, how did I not know anymore? She says that she's just waiting for definitive proof. When it comes to the violent porn found on his computer, she says that she doesn't even know if it was his, and again is going to wait for definitive proof, which I mean, so far the proof has been pretty damning. The hard drive with all of this horrible stuff was found inside his home, but Asa says that this could have belonged to someone else and maybe Rex was just in possession of them but wasn't engaging with it. And as to what her opinion is about all of the DNA evidence against Rex, she says that it's circumstantial. Now, experts have given their opinions on Asa and how she's reacting to all of this, and they believe that she just can't face the truth. She sees Rex as her hero, the man who rescued her when she needed someone, and that version of him still lives in her mind. At the end of the documentary, Asa says that she will wait for the trial to make up her mind, and when she does, she'll deal with it the best way that she can. No matter what, she says that she'll love him. Now, that's where the sympathy from the public begins to fade. Reporters say people felt for Asa in the beginning, but as she continues to defending Rex, that sympathy has started to disappear. And in the final moments of the documentary, Victoria says that she now believes her dad is likely the Long Island serial killer. There's a lot more that goes on in the documentary, but I just wanted to point out some key moments that, stood out to me. And like I said, I thought it was really interesting to get to hear from Rex's family and just kind of hear how they're handling it. This documentary was filmed a couple of months ago, so I don't know if to this day, when I'm posting this, that they still feel that way. Maybe Asa has finally come around to accepting the truth. Maybe Victoria has accepted the truth 100%. I don't know, but as soon as there is another update, a current update as to how the family is feeling or what their opinions are, I will definitely let you guys know. But yeah, let me know if you guys did end up watching the documentary and what you guys thought about it. But with that, let's jump right back into the normal video. So Rex pled not guilty to each of the charges, and since then, authorities have continued meticulously combing through his home to gather evidence that might link him to even more unsolved cases, specifically potential ones from Las Vegas or South Carolina where Rex owned properties. The trial date has not yet been set, but the case and the trial against Rex will be a big one. Like, it's going to be massive, and yeah, that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. After Rex was charged with the fourth murder, of New York criminal defense lawyer and former prosecutor David Schwartz explained that the case against Rex will rely heavily on science, specifically on the use of nuclear DNA, which can pinpoint a specific person, and on the use of mitochondrial DNA, which can't pinpoint a specific person, but can rule out most people. There's also a lot to discuss, regarding the methods used to analyze the DNA, which has actually been a very big topic in the courtrooms. Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but again, there is a lot of science involved in this case, mainly because of how much time has passed between the murders and between when Rex was connected to the victims. I'm not a scientist, of course, but I've done my best to kind of just break down the key scientific information in a way that's clear, digestible, and easy for you and for me to follow. That being said, let's go over what I will be referencing throughout the video right off the bat so that it's clear as we go along the case and to also help you understand it a little bit better. Again, lots of scientific talk is about to come up, so stay with me. Now, DNA is the main thing being used to link Rex to the victims, specifically nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA, SNP testing, which stands for single nucleotide polymorphism, and whole genome sequencing. Now, nuclear DNA, which is often the most reliable and specific form of DNA identification, was pulled from degraded, rootless hair samples found on the victims. Those samples matched either Rex, his now ex-wife Asa, or his daughter Victoria. The DNA analysis on those hairs were done using SNP testing, which was carried out by Astria Forensics, a California-based company that specializes in forensic genome sequencing, and we're going to be mentioning them a couple of times in this video. According to Astria's website, even one strand of rootless hair can have enough DNA to build a full genetic profile with hundreds of thousands to millions of SNPs. Their process has two phases. In phase 1, they test the DNA sample to make sure if it's good enough to use. If it passes, they then move it to phase 2, where they generate a full SNP profile. Astria says, quote, "For samples that pass, we generate hundreds of millions of DNA sequences. The goal is to reconstruct the entire autosomal genome. The Astria Forensics pipeline uses the complete genome to input the alleles at each target SNP position. The resulting genotype is a text file containing between 1 to 2 million SNPs in a format suitable for upload to genetic genealogy databases." I know, keep sticking with me. I'll include a clip from an interview with Astria's co-founder, Dr. Richard Green, where he talks more about this.
So Estrella is a small operation that was born out of the work that my lab started doing in forensics, mostly from DNA from rootless hairs. There are, as you know for sure, many crime scenes, many cases where the only evidence that might yield DNA is rootless hair. That's been a very challenging sample for most forensic assays. And we've developed some great technology for getting DNA out of rootless hair, converting it into sequence libraries we can use to learn the DNA sequence information, and then using this information to get genetic profiles of a different type, SNP profiles, that can then be used for forensic genetic genealogy.
Now, Rex's defense is arguing that SNP testing has not been tested or accepted by the scientific community to the same degree as STR testing, which remains the gold standard for forensic DNA analysis. Now, this is where it gets really instrumental. A Fry hearing, which we will get into a little bit later on, will determine whether the SNP testing will be allowed in court, which actually has not been previously used in a New York criminal case. Mitochondrial DNA was also used to corroborate the nuclear DNA findings. In Rex's case, it helped eliminate nearly the entire North American population from committing the crimes that Rex is now being accused of. Regardless, DNA can't be the only piece of evidence used against Rex. As David Schwartz pointed out, there also needs to be supporting circumstantial evidence. Things like Rex's truck, his phone records, and just like other details to like truly strengthen the case. You know what I mean? Like they can't just go to trial depending on this DNA. David also mentioned that the case is likely to be both complicated and just very lengthy. Even though it may seem like we have a lot of information right now, it's actually pretty limited, when you consider the number of victims and just how far back the murders actually go. And of course, a lot of information is probably still being kept from the public. But yeah, I just wanted to make this update video as a part 3 so that we can be informed as the case goes on, and because the current conversations and new information just could be monumental. So yeah, that was just a little like science lesson real quick with all the terminology we're going to be using, but now let's get into the updates. In June of 2024, Rex was indicted on 2 additional charges for the 1993 killing of 28-year-old Sandra Costilla, who had never previously been tied to the Gilgo Beach case, and he was also charged with the 2003 killing of 20-year-old Jessica Taylor, who we spoke about in the last videos. So yeah, now there's 2 more victims. For both families, these indictments bring long-awaited yet kind of partial answers about what happened to their loved ones. Both families were present in court for the hearings and, of course, understandably very devastated. The pain was only made worse by reports of Rex smirking in the courtroom. Yeah, people said that he was like smiling while listening to these charges, clearly showing like no empathy or sympathy or remorse. It's just terrible. Jessica's mother had prepared a statement, but was just too emotional to actually read it herself, so her attorney read it on her behalf. It read, quote, "I miss how she called me mommy and mama. It's a tragedy that she never had children. Jessica would have made a great mother. Jessica, my darling daughter, you will never be forgotten. You will always be missed. You will forever be in our heart." Jessica's cousin, Jasmine, also spoke out saying, quote, "Jess was somebody that I looked up to. She was a force, one of the strongest women I know with a heart of gold. This year marks 21 years since she was taken from us, longer than the time that she had on this earth. I can't express what this day means after waiting and just hoping for answers. The fact that more time has passed since her death and she was alive on this earth, that is just so sad to think about." Now, while I wasn't able to find any public statements from Sandra's family, reports do confirm that they were present in the courtroom as well. So how was Rex linked to their murders? Well, DNA from hair found near Sandra and Jessica's bodies connected him to the crimes, but Rex has pled not guilty in both cases. So let's talk about Sandra first. Let's talk about what happened to her. Sandra Costilla was born on August 25th, 1965 in the town of Sangre Grande in Trinidad. Now, tragically, she became an orphan at just 7 years old. Not much is publicly known about her early life, but records show that in June of 1984, she applied to a U.S. social program. That same year, she married a man named Benjamin Costilla in Hawaii. They eventually moved to New York together, and in 1989, Sandra gave birth to a baby boy. It's unclear whether she was still with her husband at the time of her disappearance, but court documents reference an unnamed witness who claimed to have lived with Sandra in 1993, so maybe that was her husband. According to this witness, they believe Sandra worked as a sex worker and often took jobs in Manhattan. On November 15th, 1993, the witnesses said that they drove her to work in Greenwich Village under the impression that she was employed at a print company. However, investigators later learned that she hadn't worked there for over a year. That day, the witness dropped Sandra off and never saw her again. At the time of her murder, Sandra was reportedly living in Queens, New York, but when police went to the address listed under her name, the residents there said that they didn't know Sandra. The Suffolk County Homicide Squad lieutenant at the time, John, told the media that authorities had no idea where she actually lived or who her family was or where to really find her home base, and they publicly asked for help in identifying her. Investigators said that the remote spot where she was discovered wasn't even wide enough to fit a car. Detective Sergeant Charles Lesser later also confirmed that there was no semen found during Sandra's autopsy and that her left shoe was missing. Sandra was described as being 5'2", about 145 pounds, with brown eyes and medium-length brown hair. After her body was found by the two hunters, authorities were able to identify her using fingerprints, which were already in the system from a 1992 arrest for a fare evasion after she jumped a subway turnstile. I wish there was more information about Sandra, about who she was, about her life, what she liked, or about her family, but if there is any new information that comes out about Sandra, I will make sure to share it with you guys. I hope that she is resting peacefully and that she does get her justice. Prosecutors believe that 28-year-old Sandra was murdered sometime between November 19th and November 20th of 1993. Her body was found by two hunters near 50 Old Fish Cove Road in the North Sea area in Suffolk County, New York. Sandra was found lying on her back with her arms stretched over her head and her legs spread apart. Her lower body was unclothed and her blouse was pulled up over her head, exposing her upper body. She had numerous sharp force injuries to her face, torso, breasts, left thigh, vaginal area, and she was also strangled. In 1993, during the forensic examination of Sandra and of her remains, investigators recovered 3 hairs: one female hair from her right arm, one male hair from a tape lift on her striped shirt that she was wearing, and then another female hair from a tape lift on a second shirt, a white one that she was also wearing. Years later, in 2014, those hairs were sent to a forensic lab well before Rex was ever suspected or connected to Sandra's murder. The lab was able to develop unique mitochondrial DNA profiles for each hair. At the time, investigators compared the profiles to a DNA profile developed from a buccal swab of John Biltroff, which, if you recall from the last videos, he had previously been considered a suspect in the Gilgo Beach case. However, he was ruled out as being her killer. It wasn't until February 29th, 2024, so last year, that the Gilgo Homicide Task Force requested that the lab compare those same mitochondrial DNA profiles to Rex. Now, the forensic lab then determined that the male hair found on Sandra matched Rex's DNA profile developed from his buccal swab. This meant that 99.96% of the North American population could be excluded from leaving the hair on Sandra, except for one person, Rex. As for the female hair found on Sandra in March of 2024, the female hair mitochondrial DNA profiles matched a woman's DNA profile developed from a buccal swab who had previously resided at Rex's house from 1991 to September 1993, around 2 months before Sandra's disappearance and murder. Now, the court documents only identify this woman who the DNA matched to as Witness 3, but since we know that not only Rex was married to his first wife in 1990 and divorced a few years later, as well as the timelines of when he purchased his childhood home and things like that, we can pretty much assume that witness number 3 is Rex's ex-wife. So her mitochondrial DNA profile matched the female hair found on Sandra. Around this same time in March of 2024, a lab was now able to create a nuclear DNA profile for the male hair found on Sandra and conducted a 1-to-1 autosomal nuclear DNA comparison between said profile to Rex's SNP genotype file, which resulted in the conclusion that the DNA profile generated from the male hair on Sandra, which was again recovered from her remains, is 4.347 times 10 to the 332nd power more likely to have come from a person genetically identical to Rex's SNP genotype file than from an unrelated individual. The same lab then generated a nuclear DNA profile from who is likely Rex's first wife, or again witness number 3's buccal swab, and the female hair found on Sandra. They also conducted a 1-to-1 autosomal nuclear DNA comparison between the witness 3's profile and the SNP genotype file from the female hair found on Sandra, which then determined that, quote, the DNA profile generated from the female hair on Sandra is 4.578 times 10 to the 1,040 more likely to have come from a person genetically identical to witness 3's SNP genotype file than from an unrelated individual. So yeah, I know a lot of DNA talk. Those are direct quotes that I got from news articles and from the court documents documents. And to kind of just give you some more perspective, as mentioned, that DNA statistic is measuring the likeliness of the DNA belonging to another profile, and the higher the exponent, the more likely the match. So in this case, for witness number 3's autosomal nuclear DNA testing, the exponent is so high that they are saying that it is astronomically unlikely that it belongs to anyone other than witness 3 themselves. Therefore, 2 labs with 2 different testings, nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA, determined that the hairs found on the body were either linked to Rex or witness number 3, which again we can assume is his first wife. Therefore, with all of that, with all of the DNA testing, Rex could be very confidently linked to Sandra's murder one way or another. I know that was a lot, even just saying that right now was crazy. DNA talk and all of these specific terms is just so important to this case. Now, let's go over how Rex was linked to Jessica Taylor's murder. 20-year-old Jessica Taylor, originally from Poughkeepsie, New York, was born on June 17, 1983. She is described as being 5'3" and weighing around 110 pounds. She primarily worked as a sex worker in Washington, D.C., but she would visit New York frequently. During one of those visits in February of 2003, she was arrested for prostitution in Brooklyn, New York. In mid-July of that same year, Jessica then hitchhiked from Maryland back to Brooklyn. From there, she would then often take the train into Manhattan to find work, which is actually where she was last seen. Her last known sighting was in Manhattan by the Port Authority bus terminals before her dismembered and unclothed torso was found by someone who was walking their dog just west of Halsey Manor Road in Manorville on July 26, 2003. Jessica was found lying on her back with her legs bent underneath her, and she was also decapitated. Both of Jessica's arms had been severed from her body below the elbows. She also had a tattoo that had been attempted to be destroyed by her killer, with various cuts using a sharp object, and she also had what they described as an irregular disruption of her nipples. Jessica's hands, skull, and her forearm weren't found until March of 2011, just east of the Gilgo Beach, less than a mile away from where the Gilgo 4 were found months prior on that very same side of the road. Prosecutors believe that Jessica was murdered sometime between July 21st and July 26th of 2003. It's so sad that she was killed in 2003 and the rest of her body wasn't found until years later in 2011. During the examination of Jessica's body, a male hair was found on a surgical drape that was underneath her body. At the time, the hair was only identified as coming from someone with Caucasian or European features, but it couldn't be tested for DNA. That changed in August of 2023 when the Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force compared the hair to Rex's DNA. Now, Rex had already come under suspicion because he worked in Midtown Manhattan, the same area where Jessica was last seen, and records show that he was actually in the area on the day that she disappeared. Plus, she was also found in that same area. In February of 2024, the mitochondrial DNA profile from the male hair matched Rex's DNA profile developed from his buccal swab, which again excluded 99.96% of the North American population from leaving that hair on Jessica, but not Rex. Now, to be absolutely sure, the same hair and the DNA sample were then sent to another lab in March of 2024 for more advanced testing. In April, that lab developed a full nuclear DNA profile from both the hair and Rex's buccal swab. They ran a 1-to-1 comparison and found that the results were that the hair was 1.837 times 10 to the 600 and third power more likely to come from someone genetically identical to Rex than from someone else. So yeah, 2 independent labs have now confirmed that the hair found under Jessica's body almost certainly came from Rex Heuermann and just very likely ruled out anyone else. Along with this very strong DNA evidence, there were also other key findings linking Rex to Jessica's murder. Based on interviews and phone records, investigators know that on July 21st, 2003, Jessica spoke to her mother for about 7 minutes at around 8:41 p.m., in which they made plans for her to come visit on July 25th for her mom's birthday. Later that same night at around 10:22 p.m., Jessica made a 2-minute outgoing call, but after that, there were no more calls made or received from her phone. When Jessica failed to show up at her mom's house in Poughkeepsie on July 25th, like they had agreed to on her birthday, and didn't respond to anyone's calls, her mother reported her as missing. Shortly after, when Jessica's remains were discovered, a witness then came forward with a critical observation. They had seen a dark-colored Chevrolet pickup truck backed into the area near where Jessica's body was laid later found. Now, this sighting occurred on the night of July 25th at around 10:30 p.m., just 13 hours before the dog walker discovered Jessica's torso and called 911. Now, investigators also discovered that Rex had purchased a 2002 dark-colored, dark green Chevy Avalanche pickup truck and that he would have been in possession of the vehicle matching the description of one of those witnesses near where Jessica's remains were found at the time. A forensic analysis of Rex's device also showed that on July 28th, 2003, Rex viewed an article titled "Cops Seek Help in IDing Manorville Body," which was a reference to Jessica's remains, so he looked it up to see what police knew about the murder that he allegedly committed. He then deleted that online activity shortly after. It's just so eerie that he was looking this up. Then on or about July 29th, 2003, Rex searched ads for a new Chevy Avalanche, despite the fact that his 2002 Avalanche was just over a year old. He searched for one that had the same make and model, but searched for blue and white colored ones, very different and brighter than his dark green 2002 Chevy. Rex then also deleted this online activity shortly after. Now, this detail gained even more significance years later when in 2010, during the investigations into the disappearance of Amber Costello, who we spoke about in the last two videos, a witness reported seeing a dark green Chevy outside of her house the night that she vanished. This is again the same make, model, and color as the one that Rex had owned back in 2003. Investigators also uncovered additional evidence showing that Rex was actually alone at the family's home during the time of Jessica Taylor's disappearance and her death, giving him what they described as, quote, unfettered time and opportunity to execute these crimes. Now, I know we touched on his family not being present for the crimes briefly in my last videos, but this new bail document provides new information. In 2002-2003, Rex's daughter Victoria was in kindergarten at McKenna Elementary School in New York, where she had a classmate who is named as Witness 2 in the bail documents. At the end of the year, Victoria, her brother, and her mom Asa went on vacation with Witness 2's families to a place called Smuggler's Notch Resort in Jeffersonville, Vermont from July 20th to July 27th. So yeah, they went on like a little family vacation with another classmate, but a very important note is that Rex did not go with them. He actually stayed behind in Massapequa Park, leaving him alone during the exact window when Jessica was last seen, killed, and when her remains were discovered. It's just wow, the way that investigators have connected all of these dots is just insane. Now, this information was actually corroborated with phone records. In July of 2003, the time that Rex's family was away on the vacation, the family's landline made several calls to a phone number tied to the resort the family was at in Vermont. Along with his home landline calls, Rex also called from his work's landline to the resort that his family was at. Now, further proving that he was like in New York while his family was away and he was calling them to probably just like check in on how their vacation was going. To further prove that he was alone, a hard drive from Rex's basement revealed his date book, and it showed Rex mark the dates that his wife and his kids would be in Vermont. Rex's wife, Asa, who has now filed for divorce after he was arrested, released a statement through her attorney regarding all of this, which read, quote, "Today's indictment further illustrates that Asa has no involvement in any of the alleged crimes that her estranged husband, Rex Heuermann, has been charged with. Asa married Rex Heuermann in 1996. She was not residing with Rex Heuermann in the Massapequa Park domicile in 1993, the year Sandra was murdered. Moreover, according to the government, at the time of the death of Miss Taylor, Asa was, once again, not in the jurisdiction. As we have previously stated, if Mr. Heuermann committed these homicides, he was living a double life that Asa was unaware of. After 27 years with Mr. Heuermann, Asa maintains the belief that her estranged husband is not capable of committing these heinous acts." Now, Rex's home has been a huge part of this investigation, and there have been many important new findings, so let's talk about them. During the search, investigators collected over 350 electronic devices, which revealed what they described as a significant collection of violent, bondage, and torture currently dating back to 1994. A Microsoft Word document titled HK 2002-2004 was also found. Now, investigators believe that this document was used to methodically plan out his murders. Like, it was literally a guide on how to commit these crimes and how to get away with it and what to do at this exact time and how to get rid of evidence. Like, it's crazy. The file was made in 2000 with the original title being HK 2000 to 2003. So it seemed like this was a living document that Rex had on his computer since he was updating the date. The document has various structured sections and categories. It's literally like a book, like it's just so creepy. The first being a section split into 4 categories labeled problem, supplies, DS, and TRG. So let's discuss what each of these categories refer to. The Gilgo Homicide Task Force thinks that the problem section is about avoiding being caught. The supplies category then lists things that Rex would need to carry out the murders without getting caught or leaving evidence behind. DS likely stands for dump site, which is where Rex would leave the victims' bodies, and some of his bullet points are like specific roads which match where the victims' remains were found. And then lastly, TRG probably refers to either target or victim, and again, some of his bullet points in this category are like small is good, which again matches the victims that Rex targeted, which were more petite women. This HK document also has another 3 category section labeled pre-prep, prep, and post-event. The pre-prep section includes inspecting his car, choosing a pickup location of his victim, checking the weather, and recon surveillance cameras in areas that he will be at. The prep category has 5 entries, which are setup stage, holding area, build table, crossbar, and hard point. Investigators believe that crossbar is referring to placing like a crossbar underneath tables for more support on heavier objects, or in this case, likely the victims' bodies. And hard point, they believe, is referring to a fixed attachment point in the ceiling that supports the weight of an individual being suspended off the ground, which is actually corroborated by Rex's significant interest in where the subject is either suspended, tortured, bound to a table, decapitated, and or their breasts are mutilated, which actually is consistent with the foregoing notations regarding suspension. There is also evidence that such a hard point existed in his basement, along with multiple wooden tables, but they were actually not found during the searches and were probably destroyed by Rex. It's just disturbing to read the details that he had in this notebook about how he was presumably torturing his victims. Now, post-event refers to a checklist to avoid getting caught, like changing the tires of his car after he commits the murders, burning gloves that he used, disposing of like photos, which is just so insane. Like photos that maybe he took while committing these crimes, and just having a story set, having an alibi. Other sections of this document include categories like recon, reports, and takedown/pickup, which have bullet points reminding him to not hunt too long in one area, to not charge gas, and to survey the area for surveillance cameras. A body prep section has bullet points including things like remove head and hands, remove ID marks, tattoos, marks, etc. to prevent his victims from being identified. The dispose of the following section, which has bullet points reminding him to get rid of the victim's clothes or personal items, anything that he touched, what he wore, any tools that he used, any props or devices that he used. There's also a things to remember category with bullet points telling him to remember to hit the victim's face or neck next time, to take them down, or to use heavier rope, or a reminder to use push pins to hang drop cloth, which serve to limit the spread of forensic evidence like blood or bodily fluids in the confined area where Rex is believed to have committed these crimes, which again is in his residence. Finally, the document has a category labeled as notes, which has a bullet point referencing to various pages from a book titled Mindhunter inside the FBI's elite serial crime unit, written by John Douglas, a retired FBI special agent and profiler. Now, this book was written in 1996, and he details his 25 years as a behavioral analyst, during which he conducted interviews with more than a dozen serial killers and violent offenders. And the specific pages and topics which Rex specifically referenced in his guide and wrote down, maybe he did this to get ideas for his own killings, or who knows why he did this, but the author discusses various things. First, the author discusses substitution, which is penetration with an object. The author described it as, quote, rather horrible sexual mutilation and masturbation over the victim's body, but no intercourse. The author also discusses how perpetrators of such acts would be someone, quote, disorganized, compulsive, and living with his parents. The author also references a scenario where a woman's screams are heard, and shortly after, her throat was cut and her naked body was mutilated, to which he then says that mutilation is a sign of a disorganized personality type. Again, this all suggests that Rex was taking ideas from this book. Plus, he also had a bullet point referencing to a page where John says that if you want to understand the artist, aka the perpetrator, you have to look at the painting, aka the victims. The author John writes how he's looked at many paintings over the years and has also spoken to the most accomplished artists, aka the killers. The other things written in Rex's notes like spur of the moment, cover, Stockholm syndrome, referring to the psychological condition that explains why victims or hostages can develop a psychological bond or kind of like empathy for their captor or abuser. And then also he wrote, the more you do, the more clues you give. And all of this comes from that same book that I just referenced. During another search of Rex's home in July of 2023, investigators found a book that Rex owned by the same author, John Douglas, titled The Case That Haunts Us, which sheds light on notable unsolved cases. So yeah, just crazy. This book is just absolutely insane that he had written in this guide that he had to kind of remind himself like how to commit these crimes, like what to do from like beginning, middle, ending, how to remind himself to get rid of evidence, how to not leave clues behind, what type of victims he should go for. Like it is all just extremely disturbing to read about. Now, with all of this, the Gilgo Homicide Task Force believes that the planning document found on Rex's computer shows that he was like studying and doing homework on how to commit serial murders and, in his mind, get away with them. Further analysis showed that Rex did try to delete this document, which is consistent with his use of a software to wipe data from his computer. So yeah, that is basically the new information from the June 2024 bail document that was provided. I know it's just insane that he had these documents, that he was obsessed with this book written by this FBI profiler. It is just all just really eerie to think about how he was basically organizing himself for these murders. It's just scary to think about how much planning went into this. Now, Rex's defense attorneys have asked for more time to review all of this new evidence and, again, continue to reiterate that he is innocent. His defense attorney, Michael Brown, said, quote, "He's obviously horrified by these new charges, new murder allegations. Yeah, he is in a bad place in terms of the new charges." In September of that same year, the Gilgo Task Force asked for more help from the public identifying a John Doe, who we did discuss in the past two videos. His remains were found along the same stretch of land that other of Rex's victims were found. John Doe, who was found on April 4th, 2011, is an Asian male and likely of South Chinese descent, specifically Han Chinese descent, confirmed thanks to investigative genetic genealogy. John Doe was estimated to be between 17 and 23 years old, approximately 5'3" to 5'9", and may have been a sex worker. He was wearing women's clothing, specifically a chrysanthemum brand blue ribbed short sleeve shirt with a crew neck, a second shirt from the brand Rafaela, pants from the brand Bliss Blast, as well as a bra. He also had missing teeth and he had very severe trauma to his head from 2006 or earlier, at least 5 years before his body was found in 2011. After he was found, police released a sketch of him and believed that whoever did this to him was possibly like duped by this John Doe being in women's clothing and probably had an outburst of anger when he realized that this was a man, which led to killing him. Now, the Gilgo Task Force has released a new rendering of this John Doe with the help from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who we have mentioned many times on this channel. They are absolutely amazing and just so helpful. So yeah, they released this new sketch of him, and Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney said, quote, "Despite our best efforts, this person still remains nameless. And by nameless, I mean to us, to members of the task force. This person certainly had a life and loved ones and friends who knew them by their name, and it's important that this victim get their name back. And just as importantly, the people who cared for this individual get answers." They also said that they are translating and distributing flyers in 5 different languages and leaving these in Asian communities in hopes that someone will recognize him. Ray Tierney clarified that investigators treat each victim as a separate crime scene and are methodically building the cases from the ground up. While speculation about Rex's involvement in John Doe's murder exists, Ray emphasized that formal charges require solid evidence and that the investigation has not yet reached that stage. When asked if a suspect could be charged in John Doe's death without ever confirming like his identity, like who he is, Ray said that yes, it could be possible. So we will see what happens. We will see if Rex is connected to this John Doe. It's just really, really sad that he is still nameless, that his family still doesn't know that this is him and that he has finally been found and that they they are working to get him justice. So please share his flyer, share what I will be linking in the description box down below from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Just please, we need to get the flyer out there and just again, hopefully someone recognizes him. Suffolk County Crime Stoppers are offering a $2,500 reward for any information leading to the victim's identification. If you know anything, please contact Crime Stoppers with the numbers on the screen or contact their email. Everything will be linked down below to where you can contact if you do have information about this John Doe. Now, in December of that same year, 2024, Rex was charged with an additional murder, now bringing the number of homicides to 7.
The suspect facing murder charges in a string of deaths in New York known as the Gilgo Beach killings has been charged with a 7th murder. Prosecutors say they have new evidence tying Rex Heuermann to the killing. The 61-year-old has already pleaded not guilty in the murders of 6 other women found on Long Island in New York between 1993 and 2010.
Rex was charged with the murder of 24-year-old Valerie Mack, who we discussed in the previous videos. Now, we briefly, touched on Valerie's tough upbringing, specifically about her being in foster homes, which, just as a note, Valerie and her siblings were actually placed into foster care, not because her parents passed, but because her mother had a substance abuse issue. I just wanted to make sure that I included that updated detail from my prior video. In my last videos, we also spoke about how Valerie was later adopted by an elderly couple who passed away and then eventually was adopted by the Mack family. I also mentioned how Valerie became pregnant in high school. However, the new bail documents provide a little more information about her, so let's talk about what else we've learned about Valerie. Valerie Lynn Fulton was born on June 2nd, 1976 in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and was later adopted by Joan and Edwin Mack. Her mother, Joan, remembers her as just like a beautiful, vivacious young girl with a quick wit and just like a very bright spirit. Valerie spent her childhood in a very warm and just like nurturing environment, growing up in the Mack's cozy ranch-style home where each spring the family would hang hummingbird feeders outside the home to welcome the season. Valerie's parents said that she thrived in this environment. She loved her home, she loved participating in youth plays at the local church, and she did very well in school. One of her prized possessions was an upright piano, which still sits in the Mack home today. However, as Valerie entered her teenage years, she began to struggle. At around age 14, she started to, skip classes, spend time with the wrong, troubling crowd, and actually running away from home. Despite her family's efforts to, get her help, little progress was made. By the time that she turned 17, social services declared her legally independent, allowing Valerie to make her own decisions. So then she decided to leave her family's home, and she actually moved in with her late half-sister Deirdre in Wildwood, New Jersey. Then in 1994, Valerie gave birth to a son and began living with the baby's father. But according to her parents, she eventually left her child in his father's care. To then just support herself, Valerie began working as a sex worker under the alias Melissa Taylor, frequently traveling between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. During this time, she faced several arrests in Pennsylvania related to prostitution, drug possession, and loitering, with her last known arrest occurring around June of 2000. Now, her parents were really worried about her. They were worried about her well-being given how dangerous sex work is and can be. In the fall of 1993, Valerie was diagnosed with pericarditis and returned home to recover. Back under her parents' care, her life started to kind of take a positive turn. She found steady employment at the local Dollar Tree, where she quickly became a valued employee and was even being considered for an evening manager position. This was a sign that things were beginning to look up for Valerie. In 2000, Valerie left the Mack home to visit her son and her half-sister Deirdre in Wildwood, New Jersey. During that visit, Valerie mentioned for the first time that she planned to go to New York with a man. That was the last that anyone heard from her. After that day, Valerie vanished without a trace. Her family went to the local police station to report her as missing, but the police didn't file the report, saying that with Valerie's age and her history of running away, it was likely that she just didn't want to be found. She was last seen in Port Republic, New Jersey in the spring of 2000 and was described as being 5 feet tall and weighing less than 110 pounds. My heart breaks for Valerie's family, for her parents who just loved her so much and just wanted her to do well, and were just so happy to finally have her home and that things were starting to look up for Valerie, and then for her to just vanish without a trace and without any word from her. I mean, it's just horrible what they went through, and then the fact that police just didn't want to report her as missing because of her age, it's just terrible. Now, unfortunately, Valerie's torso, legs, and arms would be found in the fall of 2000 in Manorville, similar to Jessica Taylor. In the initial investigations, Valerie was named as Jane Doe. The day Valerie was found at around 10:50 a.m., 3 people hunting with their dog in the wooded area of Manorville came across Valerie's remains. The dog had found a black plastic bag which was wrapped with duct tape, and inside the bag were additional plastic bags and ultimately a set of human remains. Investigators later discovered that the garbage bags used to abandon the remains of Jessica Taylor were the exact same type used to abandon Valerie's remains, as well as the fact that they were both cut using the same type of hand-powered saw with similar blades. When police arrived after the hunters called 911, they discovered Valerie's torso, legs, and arms were bound with rope. She was also decapitated, both her hands were severed above the wrist, and her right leg was also cut off from the mid-calf, which would coincide with Rex's document that investigators believe was created that same year that Valerie was murdered, which again would have reminded Rex to remove any tattoos or identifying marks on his victims. And since Valerie had her son's name tattooed on her right foot, we can assume that's why he cut her foot off. That document that he made, his guide on how to commit these crimes, probably also served as a reminder to remove the hands and her head. Valerie also had injuries to her left breast. The bail document states that they were likely, quote, the result of post-mortem mutilation of the victim's breast with a sharp object. Forensic pathologists determined that she had been deceased for around 2 to 8 weeks when she was found, and was most likely murdered between September 21st, 2000 and November 19th, 2000. Valerie's right foot, hands, and her skull weren't found until April of 2011, less than 1.5 miles east of Jessica Taylor's remains. Female hairs were found near Valerie's left wrist, which showed it belonged to someone with Caucasian features, but at the time it was unsuitable for further DNA testing. In February 2020, after so many years of not hearing from Valerie or just knowing what might have happened to her, there was a big break. Investigators used genetic genealogy and they got something. Valerie's DNA was put into a public database, and it turned out that Valerie had a male cousin living in Georgia who had used a DNA kit to trace his family. Using this DNA kit, the police were able to find Valerie's aunt, Ellen, in New Jersey. She ended up giving a DNA sample, and it was a very close match to Valerie's. Another relative named Trisha also gave her DNA sample, and it confirmed that she and Valerie shared the same mother, which meant that they were half-sisters. Investigators also obtained a DNA sample from Valerie's son, and it confirmed that he was the son of Jane Doe number 6, which now was officially confirmed as Valerie Mack. The Mack family just couldn't believe it. Finally, after so many years, they were getting answers and getting some type of closure. In March of 2024, the Gilgo Homicide Task Force re-examined the female hair with a forensic lab that specializes in mitochondrial analysis. In October of 2024, that lab concluded that the partial mitochondrial DNA profile from the female hair found on Valerie matched the mitochondrial DNA profiles of Rex's estranged wife, Asa, and his daughter, Victoria, meaning that 99.65% of the North American population could be ruled out as contributors to the hair found on Valerie, but not Asa and Victoria. Shortly after this, the female hair found on Valerie was sent to a second lab. In November of 2024, they reported that they developed a nuclear DNA profile from the female hair found on Valerie and conducted a 1-to-1 autosomal nuclear DNA comparison to Victoria's SNP genotype file, which determined that the hair found near Valerie's left wrist was 1.31 times 10 to the 356 power more likely to have come from someone genetically identical to Rex's daughter Victoria, who was only 3 or 4 years old at the time of Valerie's murder, than from an unrelated person. I know, again, back with the DNA talk, but with that, Rex was charged with Valerie's murder, and like all his other charges, he pled not guilty. Valerie's loved ones were in a press conference about this, and they were greeted with flowers from other victims' families and said that they are grateful for this little bit of closure. The Macks also received Valerie's remains and have decided to have her cremated cremated, with the majority of her ashes being given to her son, and they will also spread some of her ashes near the church that she would attend growing up. The family also had a memorial service for her where balloons were released into the sky. Valerie's mother was also given something after Valerie was identified, a ring with a dark heart-shaped onyx stone which was found with Valerie's body. Joan had given the same ring to Valerie and her sister Danielle so many years ago, so it was just a very sentimental moment. Joan said, quote, "This was a ring Valerie was wearing when she died, and with tears in her eyes, she promised to keep the ring on her finger for the rest of her life." Honestly, my heart just like breaks for the Mack family, everything they had to go through and all the years they went with unanswered questions and without knowing what happened to Valerie. And now, like they said, they finally have some type of closure, but they still don't have full closure yet or full justice. It's just really heartbreaking, and I hope that she does get the justice that she deserves. In addition to this DNA linking Rex to the murder, investigators found out that in May and in July of 2020, Rex's home IP address was used to search gilgonews.com, which was a website updating the public regarding the Gilgo Beach murders. In May of 2020 at approximately 11:30 p.m., Rex was on the website when the page shared details about the Manorville Jane Doe, who was identified 5 days later as Valerie Mack, like I said. In July of 2020 at 10:50 p.m., Rex once again visited the Valerie Mack specific section of the website to probably just learn more about her or learn, what evidence or, things police had found about her murder. Investigators also found graphic images Rex had in the months leading up to Valerie's murder during the searches of his home, which depicted breast mutilation, like how Valerie suffered, and tying up women with rope, which, as we know, Valerie was also tied with rope. There was also a large downloading of images depicting bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism during the month of September 2000. Other evidence collected from Rex's home and work office include magazines and newspapers about the Gilgo Beach murders, which probably were Rex's either mementos or souvenirs to kind of relive what he had done. Obviously, he probably bought them too to just kind of see what investigators knew about, his crimes and if they knew who had done it. The fact that he just had these magazines in his house and at work is just crazy. Now, these were believed to be purchased and sought out by Rex himself since they didn't have any postmarks or subscription tags on them. One was actually from a People magazine from 2016 with the front page reading "Bodies on the Beach, Hunt for the Long Island Serial Killer, who is the cold-blooded murderer killing women and dumping their bodies on a New York beach." Yeah, he was just casually reading that. And then there was also a New York magazine from 2011 with the cover story title "A Serial Killer on Long Island." Then there was a New York Post newspaper from 2003 that included an article titled "Serial Killer Eyed in Long Island Slay," as well as a Newsday newspaper with an article titled "Body Discovered in the Woods" from 1993, which was in reference to Sandra Costilla. Now, a quick note, Rex had previously worked at Jones Beach between 1981 and 1984, which makes him very comfortable in navigating Ocean Parkway, the same area where he dumped his victims' bodies. Assistant Suffolk County DA Andrew Lee said his role at the beach involved riding ATVs to make sure that beachgoers left once the beach closed. So this role could have made Rex very familiar with the area. If he was roaming the beaches looking for, extra people hanging around, then he started to get very familiar with the area, especially at night. The prosecution also intends to present evidence that will show Rex's ties and familiarity to Manorville, which is where Jessica and Valerie were found, as well as his ties and familiarity to Southampton, which is where Sandra was found. Again, just wow, the fact that he was reading these magazines about himself is just crazy. So all of this brings us to this year, 2025. I know that we have discussed so many things, but there's still more. This case is just never ending. As soon as you finish one thing and you're okay, I'm officially caught up, something new pops up. In January of this year, Rex appeared in court for a hearing regarding the nuclear DNA evidence, which prosecutors say can link Rex to 6 of the 7 murders, Melissa being the one victim without any hairs that were able to be tested. We kind of talked about this at the beginning of the video, but let's get deeper into this. Rex's defense say that the nuclear DNA testing method the lab used to connect them is new, it's unproven, and it's just unreliable. They describe it as, quite frankly, magic, and they claim that it's not really science and that Astria Forensics, again, the lab in California that produced said evidence, isn't even licensed to submit evidence in New York. Plus, they also added that this type of nuclear DNA has never been allowed in a New York courtroom. Defense attorney Michael Brown said, quote, "This is novel information. They call it science. We're disputing that. This is a for-profit company. They stand to make a lot of money if this is accepted in New York. Our expert will testify that the statistical data is extremely faulty and defective." So yeah, what exactly is the argument? Well, according to the director of research for Syracuse University's Forensic and National Security Sciences Institute, Michael Marciano, nuclear DNA testing is used for everything from at-home DNA kits to identifying human remains and even detecting disease. What Rex's defense is pushing back on is whole genome sequencing, which Michael says is more sensitive, saying, quote, "Rather than look at 24 to 27 areas of the DNA, which is what we do typically in forensic cases, we look at thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different variations in the DNA. If you think about your DNA, a lot of people see it as a sequence of letters. We're looking for differences in those letters. Those differences can provide information as to the identity of an individual." Michael says it is the future without a doubt, and that if the judge decides to deem this type of DNA testing as evidence and as being admissible, it will be a game changer. He added that, quote, "If we look back to the O.J. Simpson case, actually we saw the introduction of new technology called PCR-based testing, which is now the gold standard for forensic testing. Whole genome sequencing is available in private companies right now for the use in criminal investigations, and although it's not widespread, this could be one of those critical moments in moving forward forensic DNA analysis and bringing it to the mainstream." Prosecutors say that it is indeed reliable and that it is, quote, "state-of-the-art," arguing that it has been used to identify remains of 9/11 victims, used to detect diseases, and also used to prevent people from dying. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney says, quote, "We know that DNA technology is used in a whole host of medical sciences. It is far from unproven. Quite the opposite, actually. This is an application of a very reliable and well-used science that we have to litigate, and that's what we will do. We feel confidently in it." He then went on to say that if the defense wants to call this new DNA testing magic, then that's fine since they know it's sound science. Prosecutors also want all of Rex's charges to be tried together, saying that there is no established entitlement to separate trials and that the victims are interwoven by geographic proximity, victimology, digital and physical evidence, forensic analysis, and the defendant's own planning document, which again is that guide that he made of like how to commit these crimes. The prosecution argues that even though the murders happened between 1993 and 2010, all 7 victims are connected by a lot of the same evidence, including but not limited to physical and digital evidence, Rex's HK planning document. For 6 of the 7 victims, hairs were found that matched the defendant or people connected to him. The murders of 6 victims happened where the defendant had exclusive and uninterrupted access to his home, giving him the opportunity to commit these crimes without interruption. The central disposal site for 6 of the victims' whole or partial remains was the same place, Ocean Parkway along Gilgo Beach. So yeah, the prosecution argues that separating the trials would mean separating all of this like very critical evidence, and in doing so, it would weaken the significance of this evidence and just kind of make it harder for the jury to see the full picture. For instance, the fact that the hairs found on 6 entirely different victims all trace back to the same individual is just difficult to dismiss as a coincidence. But if the trials were separated, the jury may never hear the full pattern, making it easier for the defense to argue that any match was just a coincidence. The prosecution has also stated that they plan to call over 50 expert witnesses, including specialists in forensic science, telecommunications, and digital evidence, with the possibility of a dozen more. Holding a single trial would allow all of these experts to testify at once, streamlining the process and, of course, reducing costs related to travel, court staff, and legal teams. In contrast, separate trials would require these witnesses to appear multiple times, significantly significantly increasing expenses and just consuming like way more time and just resources for everyone involved. They also say that even if the court does allow separate trials, the prosecution would have to fight these same arguments from the defense, who claim the DNA evidence isn't reliable and magic, and just kind of repeat the same things over and over again in multiple trials. So yeah, I know that was a lot of talk, but overall they are arguing that separating the trials will not help, that it will just be like inefficient and it's just really unnecessary. However, Rex's defense says that since this case is just very complex, trying all of these charges together would just lead to unfair judgment, so they really do want 5 separate trials. One trial for Melissa, Megan, and Amber, then the respective separate trials for Maureen, Jessica, Valerie, and Sandra. Now, this will all be discussed in a fry where the defense and the prosecution will bring in 8 witnesses, and the state Supreme Court Judge Timothy will rule whether the DNA testing methods should be allowed in court or not. According to Cornell Law School's online encyclopedia and dictionary, the Fry standard determines the admissibility of expert scientific testimony and evidence that requires that the methods be generally accepted by experts in the relevant field before being used in court. And if it's not being widely used in court, then it cannot be used in courts. I think it's important to mention that the Fry standard has also faced criticism for excluding newer but indeed reliable technologies that have not yet been broadly accepted, and in some states has been replaced with the Daubert standard, which is a bit more flexible. It looks at how the method was tested, if it was reviewed by other experts, and if it works reliably, even if it hasn't been used by a lot of experts yet. So yeah, I know, again, a lot of information, but let's talk about the first day of the Fry hearing. It began on Friday, March 28th, 2025, and the first expert witness from the prosecution was Dr. Kelly Harris. She has a PhD in applied mathematics with a designated emphasis in computational biology, a Master of Philosophy in Biological Science, and an associate in mathematics, graduating with honors, and is an assistant professor in the Department of Genome Sciences at the University of Washington in Seattle. So yeah, she knows what she's talking about. There was a lot of complex science talk and terminology, which without a scientific background is like very difficult to understand, but Dr. Harris went into great detail about the advancements in genetic sequencing and the validity of nuclear DNA with a PowerPoint. She said it is now widely accepted in science and it should have been used years ago. She said that using this DNA technology is like piecing together missing words in a damaged copy of a book. Dr. Harris spoke highly of the computational tool that Astria Labs used called IBD-GEM in matching the degraded hair samples to the higher quality samples, saying it's a very advanced method than what was available in the past. Now, Rex's defense team, Michael Brown, challenged Dr. Harris. He spoke of her status as a population geneticist and not a forensic scientist, about her lack of experience testifying in court, and questioned why she was being paid $400 an hour and traveled from Washington to be an expert witness instead of the prosecution bringing in someone from New York with more expertise, theorizing that this is because they wouldn't be able to find anyone in the area willing to support the science. He also brought up Dr. Harris's connection to the lab's co-founder, Dr. Richard Green, since Dr. Harris peer-reviewed some of his work, although she said their relationship is strictly professional. Now, on the same note, Michael Brown also questioned her thoroughness and understanding of said peer review of Dr. Green's paper on the tool IBD-GEM, saying it was only a few paragraphs long when Dr. Harris previously said peer reviews could be as long as 5 pages. So he questioned how much she actually knew about this tool, and Dr. Harris said her peer review on the lab's tool was based on a summarized data in Dr. Green's paper, that she has not been to the lab herself, and she did acknowledge that Astria's methods are not used in other crime labs. Michael Brown later told reporters, quote, "She's the witness for hire, and she was suggested by Dr. Green to be a proponent of this magic, as we call it." There was also a lot more technical science talk and terminology, which I won't get too nitty-gritty about, but that is some of what happened during the first day of the Fry hearing. The prosecution said that they weren't confident they would be using this nuclear DNA and emphasized that they have mitochondrial DNA as well.
Hearings began today on whether cutting-edge DNA evidence will be allowed in the alleged serial killing case of Rex Heuermann.
Genome scientist Dr. Kelly Harris rattled off credentials from Harvard to Cambridge, hours of complex testimony validating that genetic sequencing has dramatically advanced, with high-precision nuclear DNA now considered widely accepted science. Nuclear DNA is used in medicine, but not yet in a New York criminal trial. On the stand, Harris shared that she's called it embarrassing that a method like this wasn't the state of the art years ago, but better late than never.
Now, the second day of the Fry hearing was on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. The second expert witness from the prosecution was Dr. Nicole Nowrowski, an associate director of the Center for Human Identification for the University of North Texas. She has a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Science and Biology, a Master of Science in Forensic Biology, and a PhD in Molecular Genetics. Again, there was a lot of, scientific talk and just complicated terminology used during this hearing. But to sum it up, Dr. Nowrowski had a 39-slide presentation with an analysis of SNP testing and whole genome sequencing. Now, she said that Astria's forensic methods used to link DNA from degraded hair samples from the victims' bodies to Rex are tested, peer-reviewed, and effective. She also said that she has only met Dr. Richard Green, the co-founder again of Astria, once in passing, and that she hasn't been in the lab. She also played a scene from the movie Jurassic Park, where scientists extract ancient dinosaur DNA from a mosquito, which was preserved inside amber, and then use that to bring dinosaurs back to life, to kind of just further show that whole genome sequencing is not all that new, that it was even shown in this 1993 movie, even if it is just fictional. Dr. Nowrowski said that this science has been and is widely used throughout various scientific fields. A lot of people feel and just kind of think that it was a little bit weird that a clip from Jurassic Park was used during this very serious hearing, and that it feels just a little bit silly, but I don't know, we'll see how that holds up in court. Maybe that Jurassic Park clip will help their case. Rex's defense, Michael Brown, made the judge chuckle when in response to the clip said, quote, "In Jurassic Park, correct me if I'm wrong, but the character, Dr. Hammond, said, 'We have good science.' He said it was safe, and then the dinosaurs ate everybody." Michael then asked Dr. Nowrowski if she was okay with the science in the movie not going through enough testing before being used, and she replied with, "I'm okay with the explanation of DNA in this clip from the movie." He would also ask her if she would take a cancer drug if it was only tested on 5 people, and she said no. But she said that the science, although not used in criminal court in New York, has been used for decades. She then referenced a 2018 study where 3 people working with the FBI discovered that this method of testing, SNP, is reliable enough to even move away from using the gold standard method of DNA testing, the one that is mainly used in all courtrooms all the time, which again is PCR testing and uses SDR. Michael then replied to this saying that the SNP method has not been under the same level of scrutiny that the SDR method has gone through to be allowed in a courtroom, allowing it to become the gold standard.
Rex Heuermann at times appeared to nod off through hours of complex scientific testimony. On the stand, forensic genetics expert Dr. Nicole Nowrowski, who played a clip from the 1993 film Jurassic Park to demonstrate that DNA sequencing is not novel science.
Gene sequencers break down the strand in minutes.
But the way old degraded DNA can now be analyzed is new to courtrooms. It could not only impact Heuermann's fate, he's charged with murdering 7 women over 2 decades. His DNA allegedly found on tape and belts used on the victims, but it could also set a nationwide precedent. Whole genome sequencing is used in healthcare and to exonerate and identify people, but not in murder cases.
He added that while he respects all of Dr. Nowrowski's, credentials, they're not applicable for what they're actually discussing right now, and he just thinks that her testimony didn't really help at all. He added that the defense team learned Dr. Nowrowski only read the scientific paper on the tool used to carry out the testing of IBD gem, the reason that they were literally in court until the day before the trial, saying, quote, "We just found out a few minutes ago that the first time she read the article, the journal article about what's in play here, She just read that yesterday one time. So yeah, that's basically how the first 2 days of the Fry hearing went. At the time of filming this video, the hearing will again resume in mid-April, with the next witness being Astria's co-founder, Dr. Richard Green, and then continue according to the judge's schedule. In the meantime, the judge may decide how many trials Rex will face. So yeah, again, at the time that I am recording this video, this is where the case stands as of today. The trial date has not been set yet, and I know that was so much information for you guys, but this video was just so important. It's important to be aware of like what's going on, what evidence they have against Rex, the new victims that they have connected to him. I mean, there is just so much happening with Rex, and to the families of the victims, this matters. So we will see what happens, and of course, as more updates come out, I will be sure to update you guys in another in-depth video. This trial will be very lengthy, and there's more and more information coming out about other findings in his house, his storage unit, his electronic devices, his other possibly more victims. I mean, there is just so much information coming out little by little. Yeah, I will definitely keep you guys posted on anything new that comes out. Other than these new updates, Rex's home is allegedly going to be for sale now that Asa and Rex's divorce will be officially finalized in the upcoming weeks, and Asa and her children have relocated to another state. So yeah, we will see what happens with the sale of his home. That's scary to think about, like who's going to buy that house. Rex's property in South Carolina, which we spoke about in the past 2 videos, has already been sold by Asa to Rex's brother. Now, let's not forget what all of this is about. This is about the victims and their families who deserve justice. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray says that this case is about getting them closure, stating, quote, "We're not going to stop. We can't stop. We owe that to the victims. If Rex is responsible for these murders, then he needs to pay for his crimes. All these young women whose lives were just taken from them is just so sad and infuriating. I mean, they had just so much ahead of them. They had loved ones, they had children, they had friends, they had a whole life ahead of them." So yeah, we will see what new information comes out regarding other unsolved murders that could be linked to Rex, as well as the murders of Karen Vergata, Peach's baby, and the male John Doe. We discussed all of them in the past 2 videos in more detail. So again, if you guys want to hear more about this, I will have those videos linked down below if you guys want to head over there now. There's also numerous books and documentaries about the case, but more recently, Netflix released a 3-episode docuseries on it titled Gone Girls, the Long Island Serial Killer. This series was released at the end of March, and yeah, I don't know, this case has just really stuck with me since we began discussing it, and I just hope for nothing more than justice to be served and just healing for all the families. I'll be keeping a close eye on any new information, and as always, I'll bring you updates as soon as we know more. Let me know what you guys think about all of this new information. I know this was a lot and very overwhelming, but I do really appreciate you guys for sticking through it and listening to what I had to say and just listening to all of this important information. Do you guys believe the scientific evidence is strong enough to hold up in court? What do you guys think of the defense's request for the trials to be separated? What do you think of his disturbing document that they found where he was basically detailing how to commit these crimes and all the other evidence found against him? I would love to know what you guys think about this down below, and again, let's just keep the victims and their families in our thoughts, and yeah, just keep spreading awareness and hope that justice is served. I'm officially taking off my scientific hat for now because that was a lot of DNA talk. Oh my goodness, that was so much information to go through, but again, thank you guys so much for being here, and yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, Familia.